week's edition of Yamhill Leadership Roundtable. We have got Mayor Linda Watkins from the city of Carlton. We've got Mayor Rick Rogers from the city of Newburgh. We have Howie Harkema from Encompass Yamhill Valley. We have Betsy Emery from U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley's office and Yamhill County Commissioner Casey Kulla. And Mayor Watkins was just talking about a Ditches to Trails project. Do you want to elaborate on that? I mean, I feel like it has so much potential.
It literally is, all I know literally is what I just told you. I was rushing around this morning and I just happened to see that on one of my feeds, and I thought, this looks like it could be a lot of fun. So but it's a variation on the Rail to Trails. So that's that much I know. I'm really interested in it because over the last couple of weeks, we've had a number of friends from Boise coming over and scoping out Oregon because they're ready to leave. They're very, very disturbed about what's going on over there. Ironically, on the other end of that, we've got a lot of people in Oregon I know who are wanting to move to Idaho. So it should make it kind of an interesting, yes, things could get really interesting there.
True. That's the thing. I always worry about self-segregation, right? So yeah. Sorry, Mayor Rogers.
No worries. I'm just wondering if we could have just sort of an amnesty at the border, just doing a hostage exchange at the border. I don't know.
Seriously, yeah.
Well, that's fascinating.
The folks in Idaho, actually, I think my husband still keeps an eye on the state, and he still does a weekly column for a lot of papers over there on happenings over in the Idaho area. And I'm trying to think, the legislators last year were actually trying to put some closer watches and restrictions on the counties that border on Oregon, because so many Idahoans are coming across to Oregon to pick up their pot supplies.
Yes. It's my understanding that the city, within the city limits of Ontario, they sell $150 million worth of cannabis every year.
Stable again, and I can't hear you, Casey, so.
Oh, shoot. You were talking. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. The internet caught up with itself. Well, I was saying that the city of Ontario sells $150 million worth of cannabis every year.
Mm-hmm.
So by comparison, no other city in Oregon sells anything close to that or within the city limits.
Yeah.
And
most of it's going right
across the bridge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I ask folks to consider is, what are you doing in your own community to address or talk about high cost of housing compared to what people can afford? And since Mayor Watkins disappeared, but we're going to ask her the question anyway. Yeah. What are you talking about in Carlton?
My computer was giving me the it's overloaded warning sign.
Oh, that's right.
So I just decided, last week it worked if I turned the camera off. So we'll try that again this week. I still think I'm seeing you, but I'm not. We are right now in the middle of doing an RFP to bring in somebody to redo our master plan, to work on our master plan and our zoning code, our development code, exactly for that reason. We got caught off guard and didn't get it done in the last couple of years, which is when we should have gotten started on that. And one of the reasons is because we need housing, period, but we really don't need the housing that's going in, which is right now we just got 38 brand new homes that are $500,000 homes, single family homes. And we do need some of those, but our inventory on low income, or affordable income is just ludicrous. We don't have any, basically. And that's right now the best we can do is look at our zoning and our development and our codes and our comp plan. and work on getting that taken care of. I don't know that we're in a position to do any incentives with developers to try to get them to do something a little less spendy. There were a couple of sections on these two developments that are going in that weren't really terribly desirable for single family homes and the expensive ones. So they're putting apartments in those. So at least we're getting 20, we'll get about 30 apartments out of that. But it's not enough. And particularly as we're looking into the future. So right now that's the start. Once we get going on those guys, then we can start, figuring out what we can do to bring it. We'd really like to see more cottage clusters in and some more innovative type stuff, but we're going to have to encourage that through our development code, I think. So
yeah, Mayor, what can you do? Do you have a sense of what you can do to encourage that type of housing?
Right now, I don't know legally what we're able to do. I think, what I would suggest or what I would put forward is to, even if there are any kind of incentives, financial incentives that we can make to the developers to get them to look at doing something like that, I would not be opposed to that, just because I think we so desperately need some alternative housing. Carlton, well, right now, I think in last year, our median income was $70,000 for per household, which that's with, two people working. And that's, you can't expect them to have a family and spend most of their income on a house payment. So I think that's what we would try to do is look at well, I don't know. I mean, I'm just what I've seen in other places and in other areas that they've done. It would include, financial incentives. So if you have any ideas or suggestions, I'll be scribbling them down here and we'll be using them.
Well, thank you. I plan to do a meeting that's just mayors so that we can kind of go through some of the ideas that are out there in both the governmental and the private sector world. So let's stay tuned. Yeah, I figured that we should all share information. And at some point, I'll also forward on to you the city of Willamina's kind of like, hey, we can't be at the meeting today, but here's what we're working on right now. So you can get a sense of kind of their details. But
that's right, because they're just working on their development code and stuff too, aren't they?
Yeah, and they're really determined to have spaces that are affordable for young people so that they can stay in the community if they were raised there, and spaces that are affordable for, or spaces that make it possible for an older generation to stay on the land, either by splitting it or by building a separate dwelling.
Yeah. ADUs would be another option, certainly, and some things like that. So,
yeah. And then Mayor Rogers, you have so much knowledge in this area, and also I know that you're working on it in the city. What would you like to add?
Yeah. Thanks, Commissioner Kulla. Anyway, thank you for hosting this, first off. And housing, hugely, hugely important. Mayor Watkins, just one thing, mentioned, $70,000, and we did this run out recently for another project we're working on, but that, for an income of that, given the current interest rates and all, that's probably a house at about 330, is what 70,000 would yield. So, how do we get to the difference between 500,000 and 330? And that's really it. So, and I think I mentioned this before with that large development that's going in across from Providence, Crestview Crossing. So that's going to be 250 homes total, mainly cottage clusters. Something like 230 are going to be cottages. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes out, what that looks like. We had hoped that the builders were going to they were going to deed restrict 15 of the units. But that has fallen through, unfortunately. We thought we were going to get it for workforce housing, so up to 120% of median. But we enacted a construction excise tax, And they said, we can't do both then. We can't pay you construction excise tax and do this. So that doesn't look like it's gonna come through. But the construction excise tax is bringing in money. I think the last time I talked to Doug Rux at the city, we're at like $300,000 that has been brought in, and which is better than we initially had anticipated. So that's good, and that will be used for incentives in some form. So on that note, we spoke this morning with a group that's been trying to work on workforce housing now for probably close to 2 years, and that's with Abisha Stone with Sedcor. And then some of the major employers in town. So this morning it was Friendsview, ADEC, and Friendsview, ADEC, who else was there? I know this. Anyway, I'll get back to that. But anyway, to try to figure out and the university, of course, George Fox. They own a piece of property on Villa that is going to be the site, we believe, for 85 homes. So we're trying to see if we can get any of those to be in some way targeted to housing for these employers who can't continue to attract or retain people. Fox uses that example where every year they're recruiting faculty from all over the country, and trying to get someone from the Midwest to come and move and face the Newburgh housing prices is a huge challenge. So they're thinking this may be a way to help that. So with that, construction excise tax may be a way for us to help with that. ARPA money we're looking at too, to see if there might be a way to help with this development. And then some of the other stuff we've done, vertical housing. I know Casey, you mentioned that the other day. So that has been approved. And so what that is basically allowing housing over any commercial space or office space on the bottom. And then there is incentives for that for taxes. Like every other community, the duplex, triplex, quads, we're working through that stuff. But probably the most exciting news recently is that we hired a housing planner. So yes, she just joined. Mary Heberling Creighton just joined us. So I'm hopeful that Doug Rux always talks about the 50 items he's got to do in terms of housing, right? I'm hoping that Mary will be able to attack some of those. So I think that's mainly it. But like I said, I was enthused about this conversation this morning with George Fox and the others. So we'll see. That would be great if something came through.
And I recall, Mayor, that you're at some point for George Fox housing for students that you waived some of the SDCs. And have you considered that with other lower, or maybe you didn't, but they requested it, but have you considered that as a tool to reduce housing cost?
Yeah, I'm
with
hopeful.
Like a guarantee, obviously.
Yeah, as long as it's deed restricted in some way, yeah, definitely. And I'm hopeful that that's, or at least again, this is my own opinion, but hopefully this construction excise tax money that has been received, that we could use that to backfill the SDC fund in order to provide some kind of incentive. It may not, it may not be 100%, but it would be, some kind of an incentive to builders. So yeah.
And I should ask other people if you have questions for either mayor. Sorry, I just jumped into the questioning. But I bet Howie has a question for you. The thing I wanted to ask both mayors is, have you encountered folks who would like to see a reduction in parking minimums in order to spur some of these developments? And I say that specifically because I know there was a conversation with Doug Rux and a developer recently about that.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with that conversation with Doug, but I'll tell you one thing though, parking, well, the duplex, triplex, and quads, they've reduced the parking requirements. That's, in state law now. So that's been reduced. But I'll tell you, our planning commission, you start talking about parking and they immediately get agitated. So anyway, parking's an issue. So, and you saw, hey,
oh yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't find a place downtown to park, but we've got a parking study coming. ARPA money, I think, is going to pay for a parking study. So let's
we can testify. We can testify about our experience parking.
That's right.
I will totally testify that if I knew I wasn't going to find parking, that I'd plan ahead.
Exactly. Here I am thinking ample parking in the city of Newburgh. No. I need to be sharing the message.
Yeah, it was just a busy day, apparently.
It was so great to see the busy day, wasn't it,
Right.
Betsy?
Newburgh is popping. I don't know if everyone knew, but really up and coming, booming.
Right. As long as we can stay out of the news, yep, that'd be great.
Good point. Although Betsy, there's always parking. Well, there is often parking at the cultural center, which we were at with the splash pad to orient yourself. Okay, Mayor, do you have anything else that you wanted to add? Are there any things that you want that you feel like either the county or the state need to step in on? Because you know so much about affordable or lower cost housing.
Yeah, well, if the county wants to help out with this workforce housing project, that would be cool. You know, anything like that. The other component part of this, though, it's not really housing. The other component part is childcare, and that's getting a lot of talk lately. And one exciting thing is, I mean, George Fox has a school of education. Wouldn't that be cool if we could sort of connect that and maybe some of the seniors at Friendsview? So this is the kind of thing we're talking about. But I think countywide, childcare is an issue, as you well know. So.
It certainly is. And hopefully folks know I think it's the Early Learning Division has a portal now available so that childcare providers who either lost business or had to increase their costs during the pandemic can apply for help with that funding help. And I feel like I should put it in the chat, but really, it's not useful to people if it's just in the chat, so I'll put it in the follow-up email. Howie, do you have any thoughts for both of these mayors? And welcome, Howie.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Kulla. Great to see Linda and Rick and Betsy here. Rick, what do you know that is happening with Providence and YCAP? As far as some of the things that have been happening with investment into Yamhill County.
You know, I don't know how much of an update I have. You know, so we've had the moteling project go for quite a while now, and I think that's been real successful. Providence, to their credit, is really reaching out in a lot of different ways. They're connecting with George Fox to try to provide services in a sort of wraparound way there. I know recently, and I think we talked about this at one point, Howie is trying to do camping or places for the turtle dove shelters, the couple that we've got here in town. And I think Providence is working on a location for that. As far as I know, they're still doing their car camping program on their campus. And, you know, they're reaching out. So, I mean, you know, when I meet people that are, you know, obviously need their services, I direct them to it, and they seem to be getting connected with services. So, so that is good. But in terms of their long-term project, I haven't heard much recently about trying to do transitional housing on their campus, but I think that's still very much in the works, though.
Very good. And thank you, Mayor Linda Watkins, for bringing me another pet cage and towels and sundries. They will be utilized this winter at one of the warming shelters. Thank you very much, Linda, for dropping that off. I don't have any questions for thank you.
Apple there, so glad I could help with some of that.
Yeah, and then Howie, we'll get to you. We'll get more information about all the Providence and Turnkey and at our whatever you call it, our homeless services update meeting, which I think is next week or in 2 weeks. But it seemed like an appropriate time with everything in shift to make sure that everybody was on the same page about what's happening and where money's going and where the opportunities lie.
Yeah, one other thing I was going to mention, actually, the shelter up on College Street here in town needs volunteers. That's one thing that they're having a hard time keeping it, you know, the shifts covered. So if anybody's interested in helping out, that would be a great way to do so.
And Mayor, it does seem like, I mean, I think Howie and I have talked about this, so maybe I'll actually defer to Howie, and then if he doesn't say what I was going to say, I'll add to it. Howie?
Well, I've seen lots of Facebook postings for volunteers for Newburgh. However, I think that you're not reaching the majority of your audience. Maybe there needs to be something in the Newburgh graphic where people actually respond to a phone number or a email address. Because I know that there's probably a lot of seniors that have lots of extra time that would love to do it, but aren't aware, and they aren't Facebook people. So I think you're missing part of the possibilities out there, Rick.
Oh, that's great, Howie. I will pass that along to some of the organizers of the the Wellness Collective and all, and see if we can do something like that. That'd be great. And then
so my follow-up would be, it may be time to look at figuring out how to fund a staff member for that.
There is that. Yeah, I think at least some of the infrastructure needs, I don't know about a staffing position, but some of the infrastructure needs, whether it's heat, HVAC or what it is, I think we're gonna try to put that in, or it's in the ARPA hopper at this point. But that ARPA hopper is getting bigger and bigger by the minute, and the money's not getting any bigger. I don't know why. So
our money is growing very, very slowly.
Very slowly. Yeah. But Commissioner Kulla, you should mention the COG meeting and what you mentioned there with those folks.
Oh, yeah. So if you all recall, or maybe you don't recall, Marion and Polk County and their staff came to us in 2019, not 1919, 2019, and requested that we consider joining, leading what they called the balance of state continuum of care, which is the method by which, or it's the organizational structure by which funding comes from the federal housing urban development to communities to fund homeless services and to get people into stable housing. Sorry, there's a long thing. These two counties and Yamhill County previously were in a 3-county continuum of care, which is what this is called. And because of the extreme need for more funding in Marion County specifically, and Polk County, to help folks who are homeless get off of the street into stable housing, the community believed that it was best to leave the continuum of care and form their own again. And they went to all of the jurisdictions, all the cities, and I believe every city council in Yamhill County said, yes, we want to join the continuum of care that you're proposing. The two remaining that were a no were the Yamhill Community Action Partnership, which was undergoing a leadership change at that moment, and they didn't feel like they were ready for it. And then we listened to them as a county and said, we're not ready to move because we want to make sure we're stable in our own community first. That's like the shortest version of many conversations that happened. Since then, I went to Jan and Janet, the folks who run the continuum of care is called the Mid-Willamette Valley Homelessness Alliance, and said, are you ready for us to join you now? And they said, let's wait until we're stable, until we have a stable funding source and we have our programs in place, and then yes, come to us. So at our meeting, our presentation that we heard from at the Council of Governments, Mayor Rogers and I both heard an extensive presentation about what they're doing, what they're up to, and their successes so far. And at that, I asked, is it time now? Actually, I chatted, is it time now? Because my audio didn't work. But the answer was really, we're not quite ready for you to join us yet, but YCAP, so Yamhill Community Action Partnerships, work on Vision Zero, which is a national movement to essentially reduce homelessness to the point where it's brief and rare, and that everybody has a place to go, whether that's a shelter, emergency shelter, or transitional housing or stable housing. That program and the work that YCAP is doing is getting us there in the same ways that the Homeless Alliance is getting folks in Marion and Polk County there. So, but that's part of we in Marion and Polk County, they're working together really strongly to do that, and in our county, we have to do the same in order to have success. That's a long answer to Mayor Rogers. Hey, tell us something about this. And thus, we need to work together. So we're getting together next for 2 weeks. Howie, is there anything you want to add? You're like on the ground with this all the time.
Well, thank you, Casey. I was reached out to by a citizen in Newburgh that works for ADEC, and her name is Crystal Kelly. She's wanting to create a new homeless shelter and services module in Newburgh called Haven. She has about 20 people that she's utilizing for a committee, and then looking into creating a 501c3 nonprofit to make it happen. So I just wanted to put that out to Rick. Rick, I will send you her email information because I really would love for you to speak with her. I spoke to her for about 45 minutes this last week and gave her an overall view of what Encompass is doing in Yamhill County and what is missing from the gaps that are missing from that. So I'm very excited about that. Encompass has been working on upgrading our overnight safe car camping program. We have met with all of the recipients in the last week and a half, and to clarify any problems they might be having. We found a few of the problems to be somewhat unsolvable, like people throwing rocks at vehicles at night. So we're looking into wireless video cameras and how we can at least monitor some of the problems that the people that are staying in these overnight spots are having. We're also working on a number of things with contractual agreements. We're still working to try to get a contractual agreement with HHS and the YCCO and YCAP. Lots of good things are happening as we come into this fall time and the rain starts falling. We don't have any shelters during the day for people to go and just hang out, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is right now. However, we hope to rectify that. I know that First Baptist Church has been looking to work with YCAP on one of their past shelter homes on Adams, and maybe taking that over as a day center, and that would be extremely helpful for the people that are out in the elements on a daily basis and sleep out in the elements on a daily until the weather turns cold to a place where FBC can open their nightly shelter program. So in doing my report, we're certainly trying to clarify a number of things. There was another pod fire just this last week. One of the city councilors called me and told me about it, and Pat Evans went over there and could not find any identifying marks on it to let him know who had been assigned that specific pod. But this is the third pod that's had a fire in it in the last 8 months. So we're concerned that there might be somebody out there that is arsoning these pods when they don't see people around. So that's another concern that we're trying to work through right now with turtle dove shelters. We're trying to fix that problem where people aren't terrorizing the people that are living in those pods. Luckily, nobody was asleep in the pod when it was set on fire. But it is certainly concerning that that could occur. So that's my report for today. And I wish I had better news on that front.
It was very disturbing, Howie, but thank you for letting us know. Have you heard anything from the McMinnville Police Department? Have they been contacted?
Yeah, they're the ones who contacted one of the city councilors that called both Pat and I about this, and Pat ran down there.
Okay.
Yeah, so they know.
Okay. And then I know that Mayor Watkins had a question for you, Howie, a few minutes ago.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm apparently I'm supposed to be somewhere else right now, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing.
Oh no. But you did have a comment. Do you want to type it in?
Well, I was just curious about when Howie, when you were talking about the YCAP and the continuum of care and COG, basically what it amounted to is that the Yamhill County, YCAP, and those organizations are doing the same thing and producing the same kinds of services that the folks in Marion and Polk are doing with a different organization. So there's really no need for us right now to start combining. Is that correct?
I don't know that we could combine. We can work with each other, but I don't know about the combining piece.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was just, yeah, it sounded like there was no need for everybody to get together, that you're kind of doing the same things, just.
Well, I know that Casey's got a meeting coming up on October 13th, I believe, of all of the housing, the people that are involved in homelessness across Yamhill County, to talk about how we can work together, what's coming, how we can agree with MOUs and contractual agreements to do pieces of the puzzle. No one entity, as we all know, can do all of this. There's no way.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, obviously, no, that's, yeah. Okay. I was just clarifying a couple of things.
Thank you, Linda, for that question.
So I'm going to.
And Mayor, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm going to scoot out of here and see.
Okay, that sounds good. And the continuum of care down in Marion and Polk County, they made it clear that in the future, if we were interested in joining them, that we would be welcome, but that a staff member would be assigned. So that's finding the county would be expected to fund a staff member as part of that. So that's just another consideration, right? There's lots of other folks doing really good work. But Howie's comment is very appropriate. I think that in the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance, it is like 40 or 50 organizations who are all working together on pieces of taking care of people, making sure they're healthy and safe, getting them into stable housing all along the continuum. So Howie.
Casey, would all the commissioners have to agree to join the continuum of care?
Well, I think that yes, they would, but it's not just joining it, but it is the expectation is that the county assigns a staff member to it, or hires or funds somebody for that work.
I just wondered.
Yeah, which is interesting. Yamhill County itself doesn't get any money for homeless services itself, so we would be seeking new funding that would likely come from HUD through the continuum of care we have. And since we haven't been doing that work, it would really be appropriate for an organization like YCAP. So thus YCAP is involved in the conversation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a matter of like where the money comes from, right? Or perhaps in other counties, they're pulling it out of general fund dollars. But it's complicated, right? Whew. And this is why the cost of housing is so important, right? Because we're literally, somebody who can't afford housing is homeless. It's a continuum from the cost of housing and the challenges around it, all the way to keeping people safe in those turtle dove shelters. Whew. Well, Betsy Emery is being very patient with us. Betsy, you've met some folks in the community. Do you have any updates from the congressional side of things? I understand there's a debt ceiling conversation that's going on.
Yeah, every day's a new day in DC. And especially this week with 3 major spending bills going forward. It sounds like there's some inter-party politics at play among the Democrats regarding who is voting for what and when. It does sound like they put the budget reconciliation bill to a vote in the House last night, and the Republicans would not vote for it because of the debt ceiling allowance. It would extend the debt ceiling, which is a semi-common measure that happens in Democrat and Republican Congresses. But yeah, so as of now, we don't have a pathway to continue the government after Thursday because that, the continuing resolution, not the reconciliation package. It was the continuing resolution that would continue the funding. So they have to go back and rework the debt ceiling piece to try to get that through. And because that's kind of muddling up the process with appropriations, which all of you all are very interested in, I'm sure. And so normally, what is normal, but in a normal budget year, which we don't have commonly, I would know whether your appropriations are funded right now, right? Because the appropriations committee would have released their lists because that's what would be going into the budget for next year. That clearly has not happened. So we're kind of on notice, I guess, from the appropriations team. And they're hoping, we were hoping on Monday that they would start to trickle out. There hasn't been notice of that as of last night from the DC team. So now it's looking more like there's going to be a big batch of released lists next week. So I'm hoping to be able to do some positive outreach with folks around what has been included in the appropriations list from the subcommittee by middle of October. So hang tight if you're waiting on some CDS responses. We're expecting that movement to start. We're expecting movement in the coming weeks. So there's that. So yeah, continuing resolution, they're still negotiating out the debt ceiling issue. So we're hoping to get that to the floor within the coming days. Appropriations / budget will be going to the floor probably the week after that or 2 weeks after that. And then the infrastructure bill, big question. Maybe it goes to the floor on Friday, maybe it doesn't. Nancy Pelosi has a lot of conversations to have around when that bill gets voted. So that's, if you're curious, happy to talk about what's going on in DC on any given day. It's a really intense place. But yeah, if you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Do you all have questions for Betsy? Okay. Well, we will just watch and hope. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for doing all of the meetings and visits you've done so far. Appreciate it. It was great.
I should have said thank you because I think this MCM-TV is maybe Mayor Hill from McMinnville, and then Commissioner Kulla and Mayor Rogers. Thank you for hosting me on Friday. I really appreciated the opportunity to get to know all of you.
Yep.
Howie?
Betsy, I still want to meet with you. I didn't get an invite to that, but I would love to meet with you at some point.
Great. Let me put my email in the chat and you can connect with me offline.
Great. Thank you.
That sounds good. And I think this is McMinnville Community Media TV. So it's the folks who live stream it and host it. So it's not Mayor Hill, but we'll pass those things on to him, I'm sure.
Well, here is a big shout out on YouTube for Mayor Hill and his incredible mayor's tour of McMinnville. I fell in love with 3rd Street, and now I know I need to come and do a weekend in McMinnville and a weekend in Newburgh. So.
Well, I will say that we do have with us the director of the library, Jenny Berg, who can also update us on things going on in the city of McMinnville. And Jenny Berg, meet Betsy Emery.
Hi, Betsy. I don't think I have any update that's different from what I updated last week, and Betsy was on that call too. I agree with you, Betsy, that you need to have a trip to McMinnville and 3rd Street and Newburgh. And I've actually heard great things about Amity. Right? They were talking about that last week. Amity was getting
They were.
talked up.
We were
Cute
getting
new
all of the
shops.
data. Yeah.
Oh, and don't forget Carlton. Mayor Watkins was just on this call. Don't forget
Very
Carlton.
true.
Well,
I'll be there. I'll be in Carlton tomorrow morning. So then I'll get to report out and I'll, be like, where's my weekend in Carlton?
That's right. And then Betsy and Fritz Graham and I are trying to figure out a time to visit some of the specific water projects that are in need of work and in need of funding, both urgent and long-term. So we will reach out to your specific, or I will reach out to specific communities to see if we can see your work.
Yeah, and along those lines, I just got off a call with Amity, Mayor King, and their public works person, but they were like, oh, we want to have you down for their intake project. So just flagging that they have already said they want to do a trip. So.
And Kenna West, the city manager in Willamina, who I think you've connected with, also is impressing upon me the urgent need in that community. So if you haven't figured it out, you have a background in water and we have a need for water projects in a fairly urgent manner. So we're glad that you're here.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a rural town in the West if there weren't questions about water. Happy to be of service.
Truly, truly. Well, is there anything more that folks would like to add for today? And I appreciate the ideas and proposals and the needs around the cost of housing. And we'll keep the conversation going, but I felt like it needed to get going.
I have one other thought, and this comes from my prior life when I worked in city administration, but I'm wondering if there's been any thought or conversation around community land trusts as a means of affordable housing in terms of, saving the land so that doesn't have to be a part of the purchase price, and if there's any work around that happening in the county.
I know, actually, coincidentally, so my day job, I think I mentioned I work for Habitat for Humanity. So the last, so the last two, we just dedicated a couple houses and those are on a land trust with money that actually came from Oregon Housing Community Services Division, the LIFT program.
Awesome.
So those are going to be permanently affordable under this lease model. In fact, I'm just trying to get it through the attorney so we can get it closed. This is new for us. And it's actually new for all the Habitat affiliates in the state.
Wow.
So we just this LIFT program. And so we're starting to really try to pursue that idea of permanent affordability. So thank you. Yeah, thanks.
That's really cool. Yeah, I would love to hear more if you have any information about that project. That sounds really cool.
And Rick, that would be sustainable for a long term. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's 99 years. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So
That's
it's
awesome.
yeah.
And Mayor, do you want to give the summary of how it works
Okay.
to
Yeah,
keep things affordable?
Sure, I can try to. So basically, the land will stay with Habitat, and that will be, so it will not be a component part of the amount that the family is paying. So we'll keep that. Actually, there's been a Senate bill, I don't know if it went through or not, that allows for land trusts to not be taxed. So for property taxes. And I don't know if it went through or not. I checked with the county, but they haven't heard definitively yet. So anyway, so then the family will pay essentially for the value of the house over the 30 years, and for us, no interest, et cetera. So that continues to keep it affordable. And then if it sells, either we can buy it back on the right of first refusal, or they can sell it to a person who makes below 80% of median. So it's maintained that way, and the affordability is maintained that way. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's good. It's cool. It's a cool program. And I think the state is increasing the amount per unit. It was, when we did it, was 70,000 a unit, which is significant for us, but I think it's up to 100,000 a unit now. So anyway, so that's good. Yeah.
That's really cool. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, that's huge. And in communities, 100,000 is more appropriate for what it's going to cost. Well, thank you for bringing that up, Betsy. I think it's a good reminder that there's lots of different models out there. Yeah. All right. Any other closing thoughts?
I have a question for you, Commissioner.
Yes.
On ARPA fund release money, what's happening at the county level?
Yeah, so there's that's right. Last week we agreed upon to do requests for proposals, formal requests for proposals, and we provided the guidelines necessary for that. Most of them will be out into the community, but at least by the 1st of November, because it does take time to put it all together, get it out there. We haven't done any, so the areas that we agreed on requests for proposals were for water, sewer infrastructure. So those will be going out soon. Childcare, what we're gonna do, what we agreed to do was have the early learning hub at the YCCO act as the administrative agent for that, because they know childcare better than we would try to learn it. And they know the needs and they know the players, so they can pull folks in who are either in-home providers or licensed childcare facilities. And then the other component of it is that we agreed to, oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember there was a third one in there.
Broadband?
No, so the broadband, we did a request for information. We're compiling it, and then we're going to put together a request for proposals out of that. But we haven't gotten to the stage of agreeing to a request for proposals. And then we're waiting on our Economic Development Advisory Committee's recommendations before we move forward with like a business support grant program. But then the other component that we agreed to was there's a request for proposals that will be going out again by about the 1st of November for nonprofits and community support projects. So Carrie Martin at the county is working on that in addition to several of the other requests for proposals, and that'll get out fairly quickly. And we listed some particular guidelines, and those like criteria will be in our county's agenda packet. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah. So, Commissioner, are you going to put the majority of the money out through RFP, or are you keeping some for sort of internal functioning? Sorry, I can't hear you, Casey. Sorry.
The county has only identified roughly $1 million worth of revenue loss or other projects within the county that would be reimbursable eligible or would be eligible for the county expenses. So our focus is primarily or almost wholly directed outward to community projects and proposals. There will be likely some that stays in. We've agreed to hold back 15% of the 21 million. So then that'll stay within to make sure that projects and shortfall budgets are covered. For example, the state did not fully fund parole and probation, and that's generally most of the money that our county's parole and probation gets is from the state. So that some of that will backfill their budget.
As you go through, I would, and I know we here are doing the same thing, trying to figure out how to support business particular. I would love to know what your group comes up with for suggestions on that. Whether grants, loans, whatever it is, I would love to know. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the three of us have pretty consistent. Well, I guess I've been arguing for not providing direct support to businesses because we've done 3 rounds of direct business support, and what we really should be doing is finding out, is the business still around? What did they use the money for, and was it helpful to them? Because a little bit of money spread around a lot of businesses is ineffective, I will just say, or can be considered ineffective. So what we're looking for is projects and proposals from our advisory committee that are that will affect a whole sector, so that it'll improve or create opportunities for everybody within an area.
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
And I believe, so their meeting was last Wednesday afternoon. I haven't seen the list yet, but I believe that it's, we'll have a presentation on it this week.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good question, Howie.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Oh, yeah, I hope that's helpful. And if there's nothing else, then we will see you next week. Remember to wear a mask, get vaccinated. We're getting there. We're getting there. Thank you.